All right. Hello and welcome everyone. This is the Gazpacho cycle PTG, and we're kicking this off with with a meeting with all the project maintainers, and this is PTLs, the DPL liaisons, code reviewers, and anyone aspiring to be any of this, but maintaining our projects across the OpenStack community. So we found these forums useful, so we could share some ideas, check on projects, check on pain points, see if we can resolve things in sync over here. And typically, what we've also done is we've checked on certain things, such as the cross-project goals uh, through this session. It's really a free-form agenda, so you can interrupt me at any time. Please raise your hand if you are, and feel free to take the floor after. And yeah, let's kick off. I think with the cross project goals. Have there been any concerns to note? We have several cross project goals that are currently still active. We closed one of those, but uh, the way that worked was our hand was forced because of some changes in the Python packaging, and so we had to switch to WSGI modules quicker. And right now, I think we have the active ones are the eventlet removal cross project goal, and there's also secure RBAC. And I've seen less activity on the rest of them, but if you're looking at the list, this is the list. And we just came from the eventlet removal office hours, and I do see a lot of chatter inside project teams as well for eventlet removal. So I'm not sure we want to discuss anything more over here. And then there is the consistent and secure RBAC. This has been a goal for us for a really long time now. Privsep migration and FIPS. So I wanted to take the pulse on this, and probably have folks, chime in how things are going with your project team. Are you, did you make any progress in the Flamingo cycle? Were you planning to make any progress in the Gazpacho cycle, or have things fallen off and this needs attention?
I'll jump in. I think the FIPS goal, we have a problem, right? We primarily need a Red Hat style OS to support that. And right now we don't have CentOS available. It wasn't one of the tested platforms in the last cycle. And so I think we have a challenge about testing that and maintaining that FIPS compliance in the gates.
Yeah, that's true. We do have the fifth soap still running on CentOS. I'm just checking if they are green. Most of the project have them non-voting, but Tempest do run them periodic also.
So I had a pretty lengthy discussion with Bookwar at the summit, and she was saying that it is really still rather early for OpenStack to be treating CentOS Stream 10 as a production platform target. I think a lot of the misunderstandings about the stability of CentOS stem from us still not fully understanding where CentOS fits into the production stream for RHEL. From what she was saying, basically, when CentOS 10 first existed, that was a sandbox for packaging things that would eventually make it into RHEL 10, but that before the existence of RHEL 10, CentOS Stream 10 is expected to be highly unstable because they're still trying to work out what's going into RHEL 10. And then once RHEL 10 exists, most users are not deploying it day one in production. Production users are sticking with the latest RHEL 9 point release, and new adopters, bleeding edge test environments are deploying RHEL 10.0, but the expectation is that most production environments won't switch to RHEL 10 until at least 10.1 comes out. So from what she was saying, like 10.1, the existence of RHEL 10.1 would be a signal to OpenStack upstream that CentOS Stream 10 should be a stable target environment for testing on at that point.
To be fair, the messaging from CentOS when the change happened was that anyone who was using CentOS today can switch to CentOS Stream and shouldn't expect any appreciable difference, right? So the messaging publicly that has been made broadly is that, that isn't the case, that we should just be able to use it. But I wanted to note, we do have CentOS Stream 10 available, as well as Rocky 10 and Alma Linux 10. I don't know that any one of those addresses the FIPS problem specifically, but there are options in that space. It may be worth investigating, whether one of the other alternatives is a better fit. I don't know.
Yeah, Rocky 10 was we planned, I think, many cycle before also to try it. But yeah, there is someone need to to see to get the progress, but there is nothing.
I would actually challenge a bit statements that by release of Red Hat 10.1, CentOS Stream would become more stable. Because what we've seen with Red Hat 9 and CentOS Stream 9 is that by end of the life cycle, it also get a lot diverged from Red Hat actually. And we could see this by package build for CEF. We could see this for OpenSSL versions for quite some dependencies that was installable on CentOS, but were not installable on Red Hat. And derivative of Red Hat like Alma Linux or Rocky Linux. So I'm not really sure at which point of time we should consider it as, as stable and similar to Red Hat.
Yeah, to be clear, the information that I got at the summit is what's coming from CentOS Stream leadership, effectively. So it's obviously not not necessarily what we will experience, just what their expectation is for our experience.
Yeah, Jay.
Is it reasonable of us as an upstream software project to bake in this much of Red Hat's release or business logic into how we approach our release testing? It feels like this advice is sort of based on the way things are. We don't really have much control over keeping them that way, but we still have a platform that we've got to keep CI running for 18 months. So I kind of, find myself curious if folks are generally okay with the fact that, what's essentially being proposed here is that we are trying to bake in Red Hat business practices into our release cycle.
I think there's a disconnect, and it's not really not really the intention, right? So we just kept the momentum with CentOS testing going, and then we saw that it started failing, and then we're just trying to find alternatives. I don't think we looked that far into to get this to work. We're now relying on Red Hat to start releasing stuff or have make things happen. But yeah, so these alternatives actually look interesting and promising. Except we I think we also lack resources to go put in effort with this. So with this FIPS goal, we do have we were we had a goal champion at some point, and then we also had other folks that were contributing to this goal. So we can ask around if folks are still interested in getting FIPS compliance or continuing to test FIPS compliance, and see if we can get some volunteers to try Rocky, you know, and see if that it can provide a proper substrate. Uh, yeah, Ghanshyam.
Yeah, that's the thing actually we have been discussing in every cycle, because CentOS has been selected, because it was enabled with the fifths since starting, and we switched it to the Ubuntu at some point, but there is a challenge with that secret. So here the main challenge is, like, as a goal, as a selected goal, if we see from the TC side, we should be well prepared that this is how the things project needs to do. But in term of FIPS, we don't have that, the basic framework or the things like where they can run the FIPS, either CS10, Rocky 10, or either other way. So my experience with this FIPS will be like not to tell as a selected goal where things are ready to be adopted by projects or ready to be tested by projects. Instead, we can move it back as a effort, or if someone comes up, try it on Rocky 10, make it stable. Some of the job make it stable, irrespective of where they are running, and then we tell project, now this is ready and you can consider this as a goal. Otherwise, it will be confusing. In every cycle, we have no progress, and more than progress, like there is no a proper way of testing the FIPS till now.
Yeah, I agree. Tony?
Yeah, I more or less agree with that as well. I feel like it's no longer fits the criteria for community goals. We can use a pop-up team or a working group or any other way of managing the effort, and the people that are interested can push it through. But without somebody really championing it, it yeah, I don't think it's something we can really do much more with. I feel like we've done what we can.
You're in mute, Gautam. See you speaking.
Sorry. Thanks. Yeah, makes sense. Anything else to discuss about this goal? And we can check on the others. Yeah, go ahead, Jeremy.
Just would be interested in also taking the temperature on whether there's still significant interest in FIPS compliance in the first place, or if this is sort of being continued on autopilot. I mean, it is a national standard pushed by a single country, required for use by their military and defense contractors and government agencies. But uptake outside of organizations that are trying to engage in that financially, and certainly in the rest of the world outside of that country, seem to be pretty minimal.
Yeah, Tony.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I feel like primarily it's the OpenStack vendors and operating system vendors that are going to benefit from this work. We're here as a community, we're happy to support it and so forth, but we need those vendors to step up and do that work.
Makes sense. So I'll take an AI for this. So what we'll do is we'll move the goal back to proposed and seek changes. And what that would also do is also stop any kind of community testing for this. So project teams don't need to test this while we're still investigating things. So if you have test jobs, I mean, what the proposal will be to remove them if they're failing, and not worry about fixing them or anything until we have this situation sorted out. Does that make sense? Yep. Continue.
Yeah. Sorry. So for the jobs, we already said in past that projects can make them as a periodic. I don't think any of the project is testing them in their check or gate, but still, yeah, if they are failing, it doesn't make sense to be even testing as a periodic. Gautam, you're again on mute.
Ah, crap! I keep doing this. Since we have you here, Gansham, and since you started adding notes on the RBAC topic, do you want to provide some updates?
Yeah, I can go through the progress quickly. So I linked the Etherpad on line 38. In that Etherpad, I can read. I'm not sure if you can jump to that Etherpad.
I am sharing it, but you'll have to close the shared document to see it.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, this line. So there are good progress in this cycle. So phase one, which is our main goal of the RBAC, has 16 project has completed. Cinder we can consider complete, or what, only the scope thing is left. I'll talk to Brian in this cycle if anything blocking Cinder on that. The next thing is not started are like 7 projects. Freezer, Massacre, Mistral, Raw, which I think Witrace is inactive now. So all these projects having less activity. So I'm not much surprised that they have not progressed on RBAC. And I'm not sure if there is any interest or effort from the project contributor as well as the user side, because users also might ask or raise a question like, for example, if they're using Trove, then there is no new RBAC there, but there is no question yet. So I'm not much worried about these 7 projects now. Obviously, if they wanted to implement as a gold champion, I'll be ready to help. I'll be ready to review. I did some of the implementation also till epoxy cycle, picking up 1 or 2 projects at a time. But considering my bandwidth and all this on last cycle onwards, it's difficult for me to push the code, but I'll be happy to review and answer the question if these 7 projects have any. Second, phase 2 service role, that's a good progress overall in this cycle. We have 8 projects implementing service role, and service role is something, it's not just a benefit to the internal communication, but to the operator also. I've seen, many of our APIs which are internal and used by the users or admin, even the admin they use and they misuse, and they make the deployment in a unwanted state. Nova swap volume is one example where we had I think one of CV also. So restricting those kind of internal APIs by service role, it helps operator also, so that intentionally or non-intentionally they won't be able to be used by human until they change their policy file. So service role is important. So don't just think that this is just an internal communication improvement and less priority. Manager role, only 4 projects implemented. I know there are very less APIs eligible to be manager role, but still, like there's a benefit of manager role. So if projects wanted to implement, it's not a difficult things to do. It's more of like deciding what APIs are eligible to be allowed for the manager role. So that's the overall progress. And other than that, I do conduct the monthly meeting on RBAC. Most of the time it's just me, but I keep holding the meeting if there is any question from anyone, any projects. It was bi-weekly, and due to the the amount of discussion, I made it monthly. But feel free to add your topic here. I keep this Etherpad up to date when the next month meeting going to be. So you can add the reviews if you want. You can add the topic you want to discuss. And but overall, this is the Etherpad where you can refer if you wanted to track the RBAC goal. So I'd like to continue this for this cycle also, see how much progress we'll be making on those projects who has not implemented at least the phase 1. And maybe next cycle, I would like to ask TC like what to do with those projects. We need to wait for them, or we just not consider them if we wanted to mark this phase 1 as complete or something. Yeah, that is all from my side. If anyone have question on this progress or anything, we can take. Otherwise, there's another topic on the main Etherpad I saw from the Artem.
Makes sense. In terms of timeline, if you, did you have to make significant progress in Gazpacho to keep this going? What was the, end goal for this?
Yeah, timeline already passed. I mean, I extended the timeline for the Oslo policy config enforce underscore scope, where we switched all the Oslo policy config to enabled by default.
Mhm.
So anyone like using those new RBAC, they'll be moving it to the new default, but still we had the option to disable them if some of the deployments are not ready. And one of the thing I'm considering in next cycle or this cycle, I have to see to remove the enforce scope config option from Oslo policy. Because scope type is not configurable. We just kept that flag for this migration.
Yeah.
So I'll check if it is safe to be removed in this cycle. Otherwise, next cycle for sure, and that enforce scope flag will be removed from Oslo policy. But the new default enforce new default flag will stay, because that is not specific to SRBAC. It's more a general flag where if any project is changing the default of any of the policy rules, so there is a flag where operator can choose if they want the only new default or they want old plus new default. So that switch stay there. And yeah, that's the goal for this cycle timeline. But other than the timeline already passed for all the projects for all the phases. So at some point, we have to take a decision like what to do with the projects not yet implemented those phases or timeline.
Yeah, from what I can tell, phase 1 and 2 are the ones we're focusing on. Phase 3 is optional. So we're making. So we have a few projects that need some help. Okay.
Yeah, I mean they can go in their own pace. Like we had in past also a lot of community goal where obviously there's no 100% completion, but still with based on a good progress, and most of the key and active projects have implemented. We have marked them that goal as completed, but still if there are the project wouldn't finish and they want some help, obviously we had that champion or other team members to help them. So that's what I said, like I'll be pinging those projects this cycle on mailing list or PTL, because there is now a sort list for phase one, which is now easy to track instead of sending email to more than 15, 16 project. So and see, I'll see if how much progress and how much interest and response from those projects, and based on that, maybe the next cycle is a good step to iterate on whether we mark this goal to its state.
Awesome. Thank you. We didn't get to Artem's points now.
Yeah. Open policy agent. Yeah, I have not looked into it. Artem, you're there. Check
Sorry, it was me who did this.
Oh, yeah.
I checked this presentation from Artem and the other guy. So it's perhaps interesting for some of the deployers. It was a short demo, so they just showed that it's possible to integrate together OpenStack with this open policy agent. Yeah, it can be interesting at a later stage, and they can give more background for what is it and how we can hope anybody can use it if it is interesting.
Mm-hmm. Sure, I'll check that. And but irrespective of that, I mean, this can be a separate proposal other than the SR back means.
Yeah. I just added
Oslo.
this extra information there that just to have it written somewhere that it can be in the common mind of the community that it's also there out in the wild, and we can check that later.
Perfect. So thanks, Lewis. Yeah. So if any question on SR back or anything, feel free to ping me on either TC channel, QA, Nova. Otherwise, there's a meeting info there. I mean, you don't need to wait for monthly meeting. I keep it hold just for that. If something comes up, obviously you can send your query or review request in the IRC or email also, and I'll be happy to help.
All right. Thanks, Kansham. Any other goal discussions that we need to make right now? All right, let's move on. I think the next one was a call out that there are cross-project liaisons that your project teams have identified, and they exist on this wiki, just so it's easy for us to make these changes, and anyone can make these changes at any time. These are important so that the cross-project work that's actually happening within whether it's project teams like Oslo that or vulnerability management or security, and such can reach out. Release is also one of those. But I think the release liaisons are not maintained on this list, but the others are, and it's more of an informal list at this point. But I do see it's probably very stale. Yeah, Jeremy, go for it.
I would say we can probably avoid some duplication if we make sure things like the release liaisons is just a link out to where that's maintained in the releases repository, or in some cases, like project teams are under DPL. So like for anything where the liaison is already defined in governance, you could probably just have like an entry that says DPL there, which is a hint to go check the governance information to find out who the liaison is, because if we start tracking the same information in multiple places, then it is guaranteed to get out of sync, and someone at some point, likely me, is going to be looking at the wrong outdated version of something and contacting the wrong person when there's escalation required.
Absolutely, and I think this happened last time. I think the release liaisons were, the release patches were held up because something changed in the governance repo and was not reflected in the release repo. So yeah, I agree, and I think that's an action we can take.
So many moons ago, I had a series of patches that would pull this information into a YAML file in governance so that it was easier to find and easier to keep updated. Is there any interest in me reviving those patches, or do we want to keep it on the wiki but remove duplications?
So you're saying all of this information, like all of the different kinds of liaisons, they'll go into?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I had two implementations. One created a liaisons.yaml, and the other one just added a deeply nested set of dictionaries to each project under liaisons, similar to what we've got for DPLs now. This was way before we had DPLs, though. Obviously, if we're going to put it in governance, we would need to have an appropriate house rule so that changes just get merged and we don't need to formally vote on them, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Because otherwise the overhead's going to be too high and nobody's going to use it. But yeah, it made it easier and possible to programmatically find all of the, at the time, it was when I was doing a lot of requirements work, so it was easier to find those liaisons and stuff like that.
I would say, as both a consumer of this information and also a liaison for multiple teams in different roles, I don't have any objection to tracking it somewhere else, like the governance repository. My only real concern is avoiding duplication, so that, like I said, we don't get this out of sync.
Mm-hmm.
Good job.
Yeah, I think that's what I was also thinking, Tony, like putting the liaison for the PTL case also, because if we see this wiki page, this is, I think, 99% outdated and wrong. I really like if we can delete this wiki page, and as Tony mentioned, if we can put the liaison info in the project governance page, that will be helpful. Even though that goes out of dated, still there will be, TC member keeping eyes or proposal like changing these liaison or something. But this wiki is obviously, it's very out of dated and wrong. If we can delete this, it will be helpful.
And since we already have DPL liaison information in governance for teams that are under DPL, if we can come up with a schema that is basically closely related to how that's already being tracked, like maybe the idea that PTL teams can still just have liaison roles regardless of whether they're under DPL, but that in those cases, if they don't have a liaison listed, it's not a problem because the PTL is the default liaison for any of those roles anyway.
Yep, that was exactly how I had it implemented. It was like there was a liaisons key, and then there was the working group or the target project. So, for example, under Cinder, there would be liaisons and then requirements and then the details for whoever the requirements team would want to contact to talk to the Cinder folks, if that makes sense. So it feels a little bit backwards because you have the project that you want to find in the source project, but I also wrote tools to look them up, and it defaulted to the PTL, and because it's YAML, you can use anchors and all that sort of stuff. So I can try and find those patches and publish them again.
Awesome. Yeah, sounds like that's a good next step for this. But of course, if project teams want to make the changes today, they can still edit the wiki, and you'll see the information from the wiki when we do this.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Awesome. Thanks, Tony. All right. Anything else to be said about project cross-project liaisons? We can move on. This is a spicy topic, the AI contribution policy. Just wanted to bring it up here because I think we've had discussions elsewhere, and most recently at the summit about this policy. This is the Open Infra AI policy that we've inherited as being part of the Open Infra Foundation and governed by them. So how are things working in project teams? Are you seeing AI, assisted AI generated content, and how's that going with maintaining the projects itself? Yeah, go for it, Jay.
Yeah. Hopefully my audio is better now. Yeah, folks can hear me good. Okay.
Yep.
I would just comment that for Ironic, we have a large number of contributors using the tooling at this point. I was actually in the session at the forum in Paris, and it seemed like there was a large number of people who were saying that, the usage of it was just mapping with when the tooling got good enough. We did also have a couple of comments from folks who have said that they've heard people express that they were unwilling to use AI tooling because they were afraid of the community ostracizing them or, singling them out, or there being some sort of stigma against using AI tools. And I did point out that at least for purposes of Ironic project, I've used them. Julia, who's the chair of the board, has used them. Like, there's definitely not that in Ironic, but it might be worth noting that that is one of the things that was mentioned in that room. And just Ironic in general has extremely high uptake of these tools at this point.
Yeah. Thanks. Sylvain?
Again, my question I had at the summit, which was left unanswered, is that how many people, of course that was an open question, how many people know about the fact that we now have a gate label that says assisted by? I mean, this is a pretty brand new Git label, and maybe before taking any conclusion about the usage of that label, we should be making sure that it's communicated pretty well. And at least for me, this was just before I went on PTO for a long period of time, so basically I forgot about it.
Clark?
Yeah, I kind of in a similar train of thought there. I've noticed people using the tools without properly annotating their commits. So I think, like what Sylvain is saying, that I think there's maybe a communications problem here where we need to encourage people to properly annotate things. And then from there, hopefully you get a better sense of how it's being used and whether or not it's effective and whatever along those lines. The other thing I was going to ask, for those of you who are using it, how are you ensuring that the tool that you're using is compatible with the policy? For example, Claude has some terms of service requirements in it that are not consistent with open source licensing requirements. And I know people are using Claude, but so I'm not a lawyer, and I don't know, like, is that just because you as an individual are beholden to those terms of service rules, and the project isn't necessarily? Like, I guess for me, there's a lot of confusion around what is okay to use under the policy because of the terms of use rules. And so I'm curious to know if others have like gotten advice on that, understanding none of us are lawyers. So,
That's exactly why I'm gonna use the assisted by label and not the generated by label, because I don't really trust AI tools for generating code on behalf of myself. Because as far as I know, I'm using Cursor, and I don't have any way to say to Cursor, please please, if you create some code by on behalf of myself, please make sure that you don't violate, sorry, any kind of proprietary thing. So that's why I'm basically using Cursor, not for generating code, but rather for helping me finding root cause analysis, different usage, like basically I'm querying and not creating it.
Okay, Jay.
So I kind of have two responses to this. The first is that I don't know. I'm not a lawyer either, but that also means that I'm not going to necessarily fall onto the side of being too scared to use them. I'm going to look at the general landscape, see how other people are using them, see how like society's picking it up. But the overarching thing that always sticks in my mind with this is like, Claude's never generated interesting code. It generates code, but none of it has ever been like interesting or bespoke, except for maybe in the way when I prompt it with specific code or specific, go take the approach from this module or something like that. Like, it's not something that's been at the top of my mind in the same way that if I Googled how do I do X in Python and there's a Stack Overflow post, how many times was I waiting and chasing down authorship for that, right? Like, how do I know that the JetBrains IDE completions are fine? Like, to some extent, there's an ecosystem effect ongoing. And I don't mean to say that as in like it should absolve any individual of responsibility, but I recognize I'm not a lawyer, but lots of people who have hired lawyers, including the foundation with the AI policy, saw a path where they said, these tools can be used safely, and I'm trying as best as I can to follow in the steps of those who have created that path.
Yeah, so just really quickly, the policy says that you as the contributor have to use tools that are compatible with the policy, right? The policy doesn't say that all of these are good. The policy says you as the contributor, it is on you to make sure that the tool you are using is not running afoul of this. And so just Claude, for example, says that you cannot use any of the output to compete with Claude, which is a limitation on Endeavor, which is not compatible with open source software. However, it's in the terms of service. It's not on a license on the output itself. So as a lawyer, I don't know, like maybe the risk is that they just ban your account and you can't use the tool anymore and everyone moves on, and that's fine. Like and so that's kind of where I'm confused, as it's like the policy is, right? The policy is not going to go out and say, these are the blessed tools. The policy is saying, find tools that are compatible with essentially the policy and open source software development. And I don't know where those lines are.
But writing OpenStack code would not compete with Claude, right? Even if we were to look at that
But it
particular
doesn't
piece of code.
matter, because the open source license that OpenStack is released under says that you cannot be restricted in any field of endeavor, right? So it is possible. It is 100% possible for someone to take OpenStack code and use that to build a Claude competitor. There's nothing preventing you from doing it, and there may be people doing it today. We don't know, but right but again, this is like a terms of service. I'm not a lawyer. Like maybe the only risk here is that they just decide to ban your account. I don't know. And that's kind of where I'm confused about all this, right? Like the policy kind of left things open a bit, but then that leaves, for me, it's like, well, where is that line as far as the compatibility goes?
Yeah, I see a lot of shuffling here. Like companies looking at the open source communities to define these things, and open source communities asking for the legal aspects of this. Do you know if the Open Infra Foundation is consulting legal in any way?
No, I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Let's take the next person. I think it was Amy.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, as someone who was in the room when the policy was generated, the idea is to be open so that we don't scare people off of using it and saying they're using it. Sylvan, you're correct in your usage if it's helping you. kind of like Jay mentioned, back in the day we would just Google something. That is assisted by. Generated by is generally going to be something that is automated. We've done comes in as generated by. So that's just a little clarification.
I think you broke up there for a second, but I think we got what you were saying. Sylvan, do you want to continue?
I mean, I definitely appreciate the example. That's basically the same, like from decades, you are just able to copy some code from some other source and basically infringing copyrights. So basically, AI. I mean, AI doesn't change that, right? My only concern is that there is one thing for me to just Google, to just Google using a query, click on a link, find some blog post, and just blindly copy the code without really verifying the copyrights. Because basically, I have those kind of multiple steps where basically I can just like check whether I'm infringing any violations when I'm violating anything. And the problem with the tools that I use when I'm basically generating the code is that I mean that changed a little bit. Now I'm able to get the sources, which is cool. But I mean, yeah, that's directly giving me an answer without the manual verification steps. I mean, I could feel that I could generate some code using Cursor if I was basically double checking the sources that he was giving it to me. But the benefits I will have to use a generative AI tool wouldn't be, I mean, the time it would take for me to double check the violations of each of the sources that he was using in order to get me the response wouldn't create me a benefit for using that tool. I don't know if I'm clear, sorry, but I'm saying that's for me. I think that's the most important limitation that I'm seeing as of now. I definitely wish I could have some, I don't know, some checkbox I could just use in Cursor that says, please. I mean, it could use any kind of LLMs that I will make sure that it will violate any kind of copyright things, but we are not yet there.
No, for sure. They don't disclose all the training data that's being used, right? So you don't really have a way to verify that. All right. I think we had Jeremy.
Yeah, just to follow up on the legal counsel consultation question, my understanding was that the AI policy as drafted was done with some consultation with the foundation's legal team back prior to joining the Linux Foundation, and board members who are on this call can certainly correct me because they were present for more of that than I was. But it was also written with a basis in the similar statement that had already been published by the Linux Foundation at that time. So the idea is that it's at least somewhat synergistic with what LF's own counsel had okayed them to state.
Yeah, I have a follow up for that, but I want to let G-Man speak first.
Yeah, my point was on that whether the author, like contributor, provide a context or not. So in the policy, there's a reviewer checklist also. So even though there is something not clear or missing in commit message, as a review feedback or review comment, it is all okay to ask like why assisted by or generated by, and what all portion has been, assisted by this AI, and all the context, like reviewers also can feel free to ask. It's not about whatever they provide in commit message. It's about like reviewing the technical perspective, you can always ask about this AI context in the review too. And on legal perspective, yeah, like it's still a open thing. Like even though with the reviewer, we are reviewing and accepting the change generated or assisted by, but it doesn't mean that any legal complexity on the reviewer side. But yes, on contributor side, it's written in AI policy also, and as Jeremy mentioned, it was driven from the Linux Foundation too, that the legal respect and copyrights thing has to be verified by the author, right? So there's no such case has been come up yet, and but that's where like the Clark question goes, like whether the contributor verifying those or not and how they are doing, because I've not seen any of the contributor using the AI tool has provided much context about that. But that is something, if we can, along with these AI policy from board, if we can prepare some documentation on project team guide, like these are the things we need and these are the risk, and we can add things in detail. How about like all the copyrights and things goes in which roles or responsibility, either contributor or reviewer, so that will be helpful even for contributors too.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a good segue to what I wanted to follow up on. That was, I mean, we have the Linux Foundation Gen AI policy, we have the Open Infra policy, but neither of these were supposed to directly apply to our community, word to word, right? Like, I mean, is that, this is me asking a noob question. Should the TC also be reviewing and adding the things that you just mentioned, probably to the project team guide, etc., to provide that clarity as to how this applies specifically to OpenStack projects, and with our own, you know, particular use cases. Have we seen anything else like this? Any other circumstances where we just adhere to the open infra policy?
The one thing that I kind of wanted to say in this direction with the open infra policy is that we do need to be careful about how we address these things when we're asking the higher level questions, because we are going to run people away from the community if we are making it difficult for people to get easy answers to these questions of things like, is it okay to use AI? So like, I have always been really appreciative of the AI policy because it made it really clear. But I feel like the majority of this discussion was people trying to muddy up that clarity. So either it needs to be clear, and if what we have right now from the foundation doesn't make it clear, then we need to readdress that, or go the other direction. But sort of the language around it basically means that you require a level of bravery right now to use AI in our community, which no junior contributor is going to have. And so I just want to make sure that that's like said out loud. Like, and the fun thing is I don't necessarily disagree with some of the questions being asked, but I think in general it puts a pall over the use of these technologies in our code, which we're already tend to be a little bit behind the eight ball. I don't want us to be too late onto this trip as well.
Yeah, Jeremy.
Yeah, so the key aspect, as I understand it, of the policy that we have and the Linux Foundation statement as well, is that there currently isn't much case law around any of this, and so it's hard for us to predict whether the things that people are doing with AI generation or AI assistance could violate intellectual property laws in the future. And similarly, the idea that we may discover that certain tools pose a problem, whereas other tools don't, which is why we want people tracking in these changes what tool they used when they used something. That way, in the future, if it turns out that you know, ChatGPT or whatever is determined to be legalistically problematic, then we at least have the ability to look back through commit histories in all of our projects and say, okay, these are the changes, these are the commits that are potentially tainted by ChatGPT that we're going to have to rip out and completely rewrite as a community to comply with legal requirement.
Sylvan?
I mean, I mean, this was better explained that what I was saying. It's not a matter of, I mean, afraiding people to use AI. It's a matter of tracking all the patches that we are not 100% sure of the use. I mean, surely people, as I said, people can already like copy code from Stack Overflow or any other source, and we can't like check any single patch whether it violates anything. But it's not about frightening people. This is more about making sure that we basically track the usage of the AI tool that they are doing, so that we can eventually find reasons to have better AI rules later. But again, I think the main crucial difference in between someone copying code and compared to someone using an AI tool that copies code, it's basically there is an intent on the former, while there is no specifically an intent on the later. And that's why I think it's important to keep the distinction in between those two situations, I would say.
Yeah. Agreed. And just to follow up on Jay's this thing, so this is certainly a no judgment zone to bring in anything that you have, for sure. We're not making any agreements or disagreements here. As of now, we have that AI policy, and it seems to be working for the community as we're seeing an uptick in usage. We should be fighting any stigma from that's there in the community that prevents us from from adhering to that policy. And everything that everybody's saying here is just probably adding seeking clarity and probably evolving that policy. Um, but yep, that's just me rounding up that discussion because we're at the hour, and I want to make sure we take a picture before people start peeling off to go to other calls. So I'll just pause the recording, and if